Well, my name's Gary Williams. I'm my mother's Gumbaynggirr, and I'm staying on country there. My father's Bundjalung, and so I say Gumbaynggirr, but mother's country.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I'm the same. I say I'm from Yuin country, which is my grandmother's country. And yeah, yeah. As I said, we're here to talk about education and your journey with that. So whatever that looks like for you, everybody has a different journey and an understanding of what education is, and your life and the way that your life has journeyed has taken you into certain areas of education. And I was just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, I how I approach it is that I always say that I went to kindergarten in Birdbridge in Kempsey because a lot of those older ones kind of remember me from that. And then we came home to Nambucca Heads and lived on the reserve here, and the primary school was on the reserve. We have a preschool now in the same spot. So I did my up till about 5th class, I think. Then I went to convent school. I followed my cousin, who got a bursary to go to Woodlawn College, and so I went the year after him. So 60, 61 and 62. So I did my leaving certificate there and got a scholarship to go to university doing arts in 63. The outside world, I think, got in the way of scholarship. So I did a couple of years there. I was the same year as Charlie Perkins.
Okay.
Yes, and I actually stayed at his place the second year. And but that didn't work out, so I just went out into the wider world. And so basically, I tried my hand at a few other things, education-wise, but that was my main education. Then I got involved with other political things and met a whole lot of other people, and there are people around Tranby, people around the referendum days, and Foundation for Aboriginal Affairs. It was all a part of a widened education, political, and that led into the Red Fern in the late 60s, and then into the setting up of the legal service. And just doing little things, but nothing specific really, education-wise.
But out of those days and those times, that opened the door for so many of our people to actually get into education.
Well, that's certainly turned out to be the case, and being part of the conversation, I suppose, around with some of those people who who never had the chance themselves. I'm talking about those pioneers way back in the early days of, say, Tranby. But they had the knowledge, but it wasn't. It wasn't there on a piece of paper, and so in that sense, you had to listen to them, and go to meetings and things like that. I was going to Aboriginal Progressive Association meetings with my uncle, Clive Williams, and so he introduced me to that wider Aboriginal political movement as well. Yeah.
I know that you've done a lot of different things throughout your life, but one of the things that you're doing and have been doing for the last few years is about educating people in the area of language and trying to revitalise language. Where did that passion come from?
Well, it found its, final form in the setting up of the Mooloolaba Language Centre, but I was actually telling somebody this morning about I was working in the Territory, and of course you're all kinds of languages are spoken there, but it never really hit me to say I should go back and do it. It's one of those things I've felt was always going to be there, and suddenly it wasn't. And so it's only when things are really looking a bit dire that you've got to step up and do something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course other people were doing something then, and I was quite happy to give a helping hand. Yeah.
So how long has it taken you to establish what you've got here, what's now here in Goombangi country?
Well, this building, which was the old church, was sold off and became a residence, and then it was up for sale, and actually ATSIC bought it for us in '96.
Oh wow!
So they opened the doors for classes on '97. So, and I, and well as a few others, were part of the first class. So that's '97, '98, and then we went into the classrooms and started teaching and things like that. So yes, and that was part of a journey for others that went back to 1990. I'm talking about Ken Walker and family.
Mm-hmm.
They did the first classes over there in Kempsey, just outside Kempsey, and they came back and did the first classes as teachers. So, which probably made it quite a bit easier for us, so that we can, knowing that some of our mob are doing the teaching straight away.
Mm.
Yeah, and then before that, the old people who had the vision, it was about 1985 about that. So it was quite easy. You're really not talking about language or how it fits in or all that kind of thing. You're fulfilling the vision of those original people who had that vision. Yes.
Has the revitalisation of language here in this nation, has that done anything for the understanding of the culture here for the wider community?
I think it has. I think it has. We really, they're quite happy for us to do signage and all that type of thing, and it's carried on all the way up and down, because we serve from the Queensland border down to the Hawkesbury. There's 7 languages, and that we're trying to help, and everybody now is wanting signage and translations, and so I think in that way it has brought the language and the wider community together. We, of course, with the culture, or the civic centre, the new civic centre in Coffs Harbour is going to be full of language, but all organisations like hospitals and everything have their own little statements and such. So, yeah, we're happy to help.
So there's, while you haven't had the Westminster formal type education, there's been a very solid education from a cultural perspective or a language perspective that it's happened throughout your life.
Yes. It's I class myself as lucky, I suppose. It's also showing my age, but then because we're a lot of those older people were still around then, and you got a bit of their wisdom, and so in that sense you really you're learning on the spot.
So back in the earlier days, or back in the 90s when you were learning language, the main teachers were people who had, the pockets of language that were still available.
Yes. Yes. It's kind of strange when you look at it. When I was young, there were lots of language speakers around, and of course, education and other things, of course, took you away from home, and suddenly you come back and they're not there anymore, and things like that. So, even then, sometimes it just didn't hit you. But now, once you start learning in a way that you, especially if you're seeing our languages put together, you suddenly realise there's a lot more here than you think, and of course, when you're learning a second language, of course, Kumbaingeru would be the second language. You have to learn every little bit about it. It's not like growing up with it as the first language, where you didn't need to do all that. So, and it's so that's my kind of later education, and then to be able to pass it on to the younger ones. So that, and I'm quite happy to see them go to university and get their certificates and whatever, and I'm quite happy to talk with them. Yes.
So do you think anybody can learn, as an educator, do you think anybody can learn to speak language?
Yes, yes. And, I did French for my leaving certificate, and I passed it. Admittedly, a week later, if somebody asked me something in French, wouldn't have a clue. However, I picked up enough to do it. So, and you pick up other bits of other languages and all those kind of things, but it can be done. And in fact, if people are working in Yolngu country and the homelands, Pinjarra, they're learning, non-Aboriginal, and can speak it quite fluently.
You're part of the Southern Cross Elders Council?
Yes.
Is that an important part of your journey at the moment? If so, why?
I think it is because it gives me, with all the people there, it gives me an overview of what other people are thinking, and how they're viewing their involvement. I think without our meetings online, that it would just be impossible to, my brother lives in Tweed Heads. We don't speak as often as we should, I suppose, but some of the others I don't see that often, and so that is good to hear what they're thinking. So, especially the Bundjalung side, because I don't, my mind's here in the Gumbaynggirr side.
And I think it's important that because Southern Cross has a foot in every camp basically down the coast. That
Yes.
we need input from all of those places.
Yes.
And it's significant that we do that. Is there anything that you would say to a young person thinking about education? Is there any advice that you could give to a young person that would?
I don't know whether I'm as a non-finisher of certain things education-wise, but I would say that young people these days seem to know what track they're on at a much easier or earlier rate than than say I was when I went to Sydney. I mean, my older cousin knew what he was on about, and he went on to become a teacher and things like that, which is great. But if they're not as I suppose fearful of the wider society these days. I went to Sydney, there's still gum leaves up. Just don't be too over careful about what you want to do. That you can most of them know what they want to do, and just relax about it, and don't overthink. A lot of people may try to overthink it. It's there. You can do it, and just get in and do it, and then talk about it later. Once you're through.
I think that's good advice. And is there anything else that you would like to say?
It's kind of exciting times, but the times have changed since I was young, and yet some things stay the same, and I think you're going to discover something new, actually. but as you know, there is just things swirling around out there. Just pick and choose what you want to do and keep your mind focused.
Excellent.
Yeah.